Hello again. So this time I'm working with Blender. What I did is I converted the action description of Maya to mesh and then I exported them to OBJ. I imported them back in Blender so that I can do some finer adjustment. As you can see in here, I'm just soft selecting a bunch of hair strands, scaling them, rotating them in order to get some more opacity between them. Make sure that whenever you are scaling, do not overdo it. If you do that, you might get a bad result in the texture. So I wasn't really happy with the first pass, so I decided that I will go back and readjust them a little bit. It's always fine to press Ctrl Z on your work. You do not need to lock in anything at the first go. Make sure that you get everything on the texture side right before you really move on to creating cards. So right now I am adding some thickness onto the strands. I created a solidify modifier in Blender. Then I selected the tip of one hair strand, right? And then I selected similar with area. You might need to control the area threshold a little bit so that you will be selecting the tips of all the hair strands present, right? That way you will have a little hole on the top and the bottom, at the root and the tip of every hair strand. Subdivide it, export it, and next we will be doing a little bit more tweaking in Zbrush. For Zbrush, I don't think there is anything important to talk about. What I basically did was I imported the hair strands in Zbrush, just added a little bit of thickness by inflating them. Then you can always select by mask. So if you select mask by features and your borders are enabled, right, you will select the roots and the tips since we created a hole in them in Blender, and then you can inflate or deflate it according to your taste to get that little extra tapering. So yeah, now I'm back in Blender. What I'm doing is I'm creating a plane for the bake. So the bottom one will be the baking plane, and the top one is like an exact duplicate of the same plane, which we will be using as a cage. Export all of them. Export the bottom plane as the low poly, the upper one as the cage, the hair strands as high poly, and I will be using XNormal for the bake. Import your meshes. So in high resolution mesh, just import the hair strand sets. For the low resolution one, import the bottom plane first, then right click, select custom cage and import the upper plane. So here I'm trying to bake all the utility map. By utility map I mean normals, ambient occlusion, heights, etc. I will be using the albedo map as the main source of opacity, but for that make sure that you do not have any kind of edge padding enabled. For the utility maps, edge padding should work just fine. We will still be tweaking them a little bit in Photoshop. But yeah, so here you have the height map. We just baked the normal map a little bit earlier. I guess my software crashes while baking the ambient occlusion map because I don't know, it may have been a little bit heavy on my CPU. I don't know what XNormal uses for baking ambient occlusion map. Alright, so here I'm back after the cut. As you can see, my ambient occlusion map is baked, and now I will be baking the opacity map. So for the opacity, just select the base color, and by default, XNormal will bake out the mesh color as white and keep the backgrounds black. Make sure that the edge padding is 0 for the base color. So now I will be tweaking all of the utility maps in Photoshop. It's nothing much. I will just be adding a black background to them, maybe a little bit of more edge padding. The way you can do it is duplicate the original texture, go to filter, maximum, and then increase the slider as much as you desire for the thickness to be. For the opacity map, I won't be doing such thing. You want your opacity map just as it is. What I'll be doing is adding a little bit of blur. So this step is completely optional, right? I just add blur for that extra anti-aliasing effect. So yeah, next I'll be just adding in some gradient onto the ambient occlusion map, I believe it is. The reason why I do it is because for the depth sortage, right? The more opaque the texture is, the darker it gets. The less opaque the texture is, the whiter it gets. So in this way, everything that is more opaque, that will be more closer to the scalp when we'll be creating haircuts. They will be more darker, right? And the less opaque it is, it gets a little bit of lighter, which implies that they will be a little bit on the top, a little bit on the, on the flyaway sides of the haircuts, and hence the lightness of them. Alright, I guess that will be it for this one. See you in the next video.